Welcome to the last call to the journey to No Way Home. Last time we watched an animated Spider-Verse movie, and now we're in the MCU track, close to seeing a live-action multiverse Spider-Man film. Don't worry, I won't spoil anything about this movie until we reach the No Way Home portion of the video. I'm very excited to get into the video. In fact, I've seen Tom Holland before in The Impossible, and I was excited to see him as Spider-Man, and that they were going to make a completely different Spider-Man movie set in the MCU. I remember telling my friends about this, but I recall one of them thinking I was lying, and them being confused about the Sony movie rights thing, which back then it wasn't largely known as it is now, but I remember being super excited to see his debut in the following movie. However, before we get into today's video, I think it would be nice if you can click on the subscribe button. It's free, I do these videos for fun, and seeing people interact with the video and the channel makes me happy, and I want to continue making more content. Now, back to the video. Starting off with Iron Man 2, if you didn't know, the kid was confirmed to be a young Peter Parker. Nothing much to comment here. Tony does say "nice work, kid," which sounds a lot like the line he says in Peter in Civil War.
Nice job, kid.
Speaking of, for this movie, I only rewatched some scenes that featured Peter Parker, as well as the Stark Foundation presentation, for reasons you may or may not understand. I felt like this was a great way to introduce a new Spider-Man into the universe, instead of using the usual formula of a character having a standalone movie and then conveniently joining the Avengers along the way. And they just straight up just put him in Civil War. It's bold, excellently executed. They try their best to establish that Tom Holland's portrayal is very different, which is good considering the amount of complaints about how similar the Amazing Spider-Man movies were with the Raimi trilogy. And one of the key differences is his Aunt May. They keep reminding reviewers that how young and attractive this version of her is. Plus, she can make a better meatloaf than Sally Field. Spider-Man isn't in the movie a lot, but you can tell this version of Peter is way more talky, quippy, a movie geek, a tech whiz, and not very self-reliable in battle. For instance, asking Iron Man what he should do. I also noticed there's subtle clues about his spidey sense not working, and it's different from the other adaptations. It works mainly when he's focused, otherwise he's screwed. I also really enjoyed seeing this version of Spider-Man fanboying around other characters, especially with Captain America, and I kinda wish that they interacted more, but you know why. I'm not going to rate this movie or rank this crossover movies in the Spider-Man movies list, because there's no point doing so, and the Avengers movies aren't fully about him. So now, on to the next movie. So I really like this movie. I enjoy how different it is from the other films. It isn't about a Spider-Man defending the whole of New York, it's about a teenager who's been entrusted with more power and superhero experience than he has ever had before, and is desperate to become an Avenger, but to only realize that it's irresponsible to leave the smaller, more vulnerable people behind. I know that there are a lot of people that don't like him using tech and calling him an Iron Boy Jr. As much as I find the Iron Boy jokes like hilarious, it does frustrate me when people turn those jokes into very serious criticisms, because it just shows that they haven't either A, haven't seen the movie or haven't seen the movie in ages, or B, just didn't pay attention to the story in general. And it may sound like I'm one of those Snyder cultists who defend Batman vs Superman, except I'm not pulling shit out of my ass when I defend this film. Peter being overconfident and listening to an AI instead of his own instincts isn't as hard to grasp as an essay to the Morpheus scene. The whole point of it was him pushing himself to become Tony Stark, and well, being Iron Man comes with a lot of screw-ups, and that's why he took the suit away from Peter. Tony even warns Peter in the beginning of the film, but of course he's a dumb teenager with superpowers, so he's gonna do the opposite. And for the "I hate him because he used a tech" issue, the story takes place post-Civil War, and there's still a divide between the Avengers. Are people purposefully forgetting that Peter was given an Iron Spider suit in the Civil War comic? I know I've mentioned that this movie is different, and I just wanted to add that I really like how grounded it feels. Most of the time we see Peter in the streets of Queens, and he can't keep swinging to locations like in the other iterations, and that's why he stole Flash's ride. Like, it's funny, plus it gave us a pretty neat homage to Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I also love the high school setting. It's filled with life and not desaturated like in the other movies. And without this high school environment, we wouldn't have this version of Ned Leeds, who will say has the best friendship with Peter than any other Spider-Man movie. He never takes Peter's crush, he's super supportive, they both have a lot in common, and he even let Peter place the Lego Darth cities anywhere on the Death Star. James Franco's Harry Osborn probably would have taken credit for making it, and Dane DeHaan would have just been upset that his Spider-Man doesn't help him make it.
You're a fraud, Spider-Man!
Also, the high school environment introduces us to Liz. Hot take, she's the worst Spider-Man love interest, but she's not horrible. I just think it's weird that she's the leader of the physics decathlon, but she couldn't figure out that Peter goes missing plus Peter knowing Spider-Man equals Peter is Spider-Man. In that car ride, I mean, her dad was able to deduce that. But I guess there's a reason why MJ is chosen to be the next physics decathlon leader, and considering we see subtle nods to her seeing and figuring out Peter's secret identity. Although that's my nitpick for the car scene, it is honestly my favorite scene from this movie, and it all has to do with the chemistry between Michael Keaton and Tom Holland. But to rewind further, I remember how shocked I was when Peter was knocking at the door. I generally remember thinking, oh, I wonder what her dad looks like, and then freaking out because the Vulture just opens the door. It was really unexpected. It was a well executed plot twist, to the point that even the cinema that I was literally in gasped. There was so much tension in the car ride that it's both serious and hilarious at the same time. And I thought it was clever how the traffic light goes green when Toomes realizes that Peter is Spider-Man. And as for the MCU villains goes, the Vulture is one of the best that there is, and that's pretty rare for the MCU to have a good villain. I also like how they made him big enough to be a problem for Peter, but he's an Avengers level threat, hence an actual explanation why you don't see the other Avengers in this movie. As for other criticisms goes, I do have a nitpick with the continuity issues. In the end credits of Civil War, Peter had a bruise from Steve, but it isn't there on the car ride with Tony Stark. I can let this one off considering the MCU does have a track record of having inconsistent end credits. For instance, Loki in the first Thor movie is already on Earth, but it isn't in the first Avengers movie. But there are some stuff that is definitely odd, like Peter's reaction to the Giant Man in the vlog is way different than in Civil War, and how this movie claims that all of Phase 1 takes place in 2008 or before that. It is definitely odd. Also, Aunt May burnt her meatloaf in this movie, so gotta lower her in the meatloaf tier list sadly. As for CGI goes, it used to bother me, but this time not as much, probably because I've seen this movie so many times that I've become desensitized to it. Not to go lie, there's some obvious green screen that occurs in some scenes, which unfortunately happens to a lot of MCU movies. Overall, I'm going to rate this movie 4 stars. Usually I rank these movies all the way to the end, but I just wanted to quickly say that it's tied with the first Spider-Man movie for me. Both movies are good in their own way. One is a full-fledged superhero movie that has revolutionized the genre, and the other is a superhero high school comedy that is set in the cinematic universe that is well executed, and it shows how much you can broaden the story of Spider-Man. Next film. Spider-Man's role is very limited here, but this is considering that this is a whole crossover film, and Peter Parker isn't one of the main crucial characters. I like the dynamic between Peter and everyone else. He provides a level of half seriousness and half comic relief. For example, using an alien's reference to rescue Doctor Strange, they also elevated Tony's role into an actual mentor role for Peter, unlike in Homecoming where he is secretly keeping an eye on him. The action with the Iron Spider suit is great and looks great too, but it's mainly unfair to say that it has the best action moments out of all the Spider-Man films, especially when the other characters that carried the fights were with him. It's fair to say that Tom Holland carried that blipped scene. Everyone gets erased without realizing, but his spidey sense knew that what was happening, and so that scene was able to bring some emotion into it. Also, you gotta appreciate Ned for distracting the whole school bus. This movie doesn't show much of a Spider-Man until the very end battle, so that's why I watched a few scenes where Tony reflects on his relationship with Peter. These parts are actually really worth rewatching. When Tony returns back to Earth, the first thing he says to Steve was, "I lost a kid." We later see Tony adjust to a new life with a wife and a daughter. The Avengers try to convince him that they can return things back to normal, but Tony doesn't want to waste the new life he has now. What causes him to change his mind is when he sees a picture frame of him and Peter, and realizing that he has a responsibility to help him. I also think he was secretly really liked Peter this whole time, considering he was secretly checking up on him in Homecoming, going to make him an Avenger in the same movie, and was a bit saddened and proud that he declined, made him an Avenger immediately in Infinity War, and also that he hugged Peter in the middle of a battlefield in Endgame. I know it's a reference to the hug scene in Homecoming, but you can think of it as just more than just a funny callback. If I had to add one thing, I wouldn't want Aunt May to be blipped. In Homecoming, she says that she's not fond of Tony, so I thought it would be more interesting if she convinced Tony to go rescue Peter in some sort of emotional moment, or after Tony looks at the picture frame, he visits May at feasts, seeing how she's coping and also missing Peter, which could lead to Tony to a hole of guilt, like Tobey Maguire's Peter was in Spider-Man 2 with his Aunt May. And then seeing her in the funeral with Peter would add even more weight to that scene. Seeing Spider-Man fight a horde of brainless aliens with the instant kill function was cool. Him traveling around the map with the gauntlet was cool too, but it gave us a very brief interaction with people that he doesn't know. This is mainly an endgame problem, but I wish we saw more characters to talk to each other for the first time. For example, Spider-Man interacting with the Hulk, Rocket, Thor, etc. I really thought that Spider-Man returning to his high school while Tony's last message plays in the background makes it so emotional. Looking at Peter and Ned technically meet for the first time in 5 years with their signature handshake and a hug just shows even more why I like this friendship more than Tobey Maguire's Peter with Harry, or Andrew Garfield's Peter with their crack addict Harry. And it gives us a perfect lead to Peter's to-do list. This is a short that was released on the Blu-ray for Far From Home. To be honest, I didn't even know that this existed. I honestly thought these were just deleted scenes that didn't make it to the final movie. And I'm pretty sure that's the case, considering the final fight with the Mafia was in the official trailer. This is very casual Marvel short of Peter getting ready for the field trip in Far From Home. There's some good content in here, like Peter pawning all of his toys except for his favorite one, and I really like the action sequence with the Mafia. If I were to make 2 changes to the fight, it would be that I would replace the Manfredi Mafia with Hammerhead and his goons, and show some hint that the Peter's Tinkle isn't working, which could help elevate Far From Home's plot. But yeah, I'm gonna rate this movie with 3 stars, meaning that it's above The Amazing Spider-Man 2 and Venom 1, as rightfully so. This movie is absolutely great. The story is a lot more refined than in Homecoming. It's a good follow-up to the Endgame, and it's a great conclusion to the Phase 3 Marvel movies. Unlike in Homecoming, where Peter was desperate to become an Avenger, but for then to realize that he wants to look out for the little guy, this movie is about him being forced to have more power and be more responsible for the entire world. So even though he doesn't want to become an Iron Boy Jr., the whole world is basically forcing him into being Iron Boy Jr. To also add to the point, Peter and Tony are similar but also largely different. They're both geniuses that also made their own suits to fight the bad guy. However, Peter doesn't constantly rely on an AI to guide him, which is character development from Homecoming. He feels more pressure from being a worldwide hero than compared to Tony Stark, and Peter adds less tech to his suit than Iron Man. I'm not kidding, in the final fight he only uses 4 different types of tech: the parachute, the web wings, taser webs, and the normal webs. That's it. So for like half the movie, it's him wanting to avoid responsibility, but he knows he can't. Like he would prefer to hang out with his friends, but he needs to make an excuse to fight a live-out monster. So that's one of the main reasons why he gives Mysterio the Edith glasses. Another reason is that he doesn't feel like he can be the next Iron Man, and that Mysterio is extremely manipulative. He compliments Peter a lot, and you can see the camera cut to Peter smiling when he does that, which is very different from Peter's relationship from Tony. And speaking of Mysterio, I don't have a top 10 MCU villain list, but I know he's in there, although I do think the plot twist about him was predictable, and it could be because I just know him from this comic book origin, but it did highlight his narcissism and insecurity, like how Tony reveals the name Barf in the movie, which is completely different from the scene in Civil War.
Augmented retroframing, or BARF. God, I gotta work on that acronym.
Fit to wield. Like the holographic system I designed. A revolutionary breakthrough with limitless applications that Tony turned into a self-therapy machine and renamed
Binarily augmented retroframing, or BARF. Oh, $611 million for my little therapeutic experiment.
He renamed my life's work, Barf.
As you can see, no one was laughing in the Civil War clip, and it was all in Beck's head. Also worth noting that his technology was funded over $500 million by Tony, but he still felt that he wasn't enough by his former employer. Also about Mysterio, we wouldn't have to continue the tradition of the second Spider-Man movie having the best visual effects, and also the best mid-credit scene in superhero movie history. I actually like how they quickly developed MJ into a romantic lead. It's a lot better than a do they know that they both liked each other kind of story. Ned is still used for comic relief, and they inserted a bit more Flash Thompson into this film too. I doubt they'll make him into Agent Venom, but I'm very curious about the very subtle storyline about his rich parents that aren't there for him. Aunt May is pretty much also used for comic relief, but in a confusing relationship with Happy. I kinda wish that she was in the plane with Happy and Peter in that scene, and she was motivating him too, but I do like how they utilize Happy in that scene. He's not just used to laugh at or being badly hurt to motivate the main character, but he's the one that motivates Peter and gives him the correct advice on being Spider-Man. It's a way better use for his character, and it helps Spider-Man focus on his Peter tingle. And it's a good side plot for Peter to lose to Mysterio and beat him. Oh yeah, before I rewatched this movie, I thought I would have an issue with Peter being given the Edith glasses, but after viewing, I understand it was just Tony giving it to Peter to show to the world that he can be better than him. However, I would have changed it so that Mysterio interfered with Tony's will and made it so that Edith goes straight to Peter instead of Pepper, Nick Fury, Rhodey, or anyone else. Plus, imagine how crazy it would have been if they were the ones to write to the next Tony Stark message. And then they can make it so that Tony actually passes down to Peter his workbench machine that we see in No Way Home. Before I give the final score, the music I guess isn't an improvement, but it doesn't contain any memorable tracks other than Peter's theme, Mysterio's theme, and the orchestra for when they do the MJ and Peter romance stuff. So overall, I'm going to give this movie a 4.5 stars out of 5. It's pretty entertaining to watch, and the story is pretty good. Okay, I didn't really write notes for the zombies episode of What If, so all I'll say is that they utilized Spider-Man well with his zombie movie knowledge, and I like him being the beacon of hope. Honestly, it was a waste that he wasn't in the finale. Hey everyone, how's everyone doing? I don't know why I'm doing a voice right now, but in exactly 1 hour and 40 minutes, I'll be in the cinema watching Spider-Man No Way Home. And I know we're in the middle of a road to the No Way Home, but I just want to share my predictions and whatever. So far, right now, I am feeling a little nervous because I don't know if Toby and Andrew are returning. The only thing that's giving me hope is that Daniel RPK, the guy who breaks all the Marvel news and stuff, he's confirmed it. Well, a few weeks ago he confirmed that Kingpin will return in Hawkeye, and I watched this morning's Hawkeye episode and he appeared in it at the very end, so that was a notification. Daniel RPK has confirmed it. I don't know, I'm very skeptical of what's to come. It's hard to say what's happening, what's gonna happen. But we will know for sure in the time to come. Hopefully it's good. Right now I think it will be ranked number 3 or number 4 in the Spider-Man movie list. The story could be very meh or mediocre or predictable, but it'll be so fan servicey that you can't exactly hate it. So I'm hoping at least an 8 out of 10, or what I'll say is a 4 out of 5. If it's anything below that, it's gonna hurt my feelings. I'm just looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to how the hybrid suit or the integrated suit will come into fruition in the movie. If there's gonna be a Sinister Six member in the movie, it's hard to say. I'm looking forward to all of this, and I can't believe that today is the day. It's freaking wild. And yeah, I'll keep you in touch. See you in a bit. So they did it. They actually did it. They gotten both Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire in this film. And this journey of recapping the whole franchise wasn't a waste after all. Although kinda sad that we didn't get a Sinister Six, I understand their choices of other villains that they could have included were either too similar or just too embarrassing to include. I like how John Watts movies are increasingly improving itself. For example, Aunt May isn't just an unusually attractive mother figure used for comic relief. We now see her as someone who believes in giving people second chances, especially villains from other universes, and how that becomes her demise. But it will impact her on Peter's morale. And again, I like this theme of responsibility with these movies. First movie was about Peter protecting the neighborhood. The second movie was being responsible for the whole world. And this one goes further, and it's him saving the multiverse. Ned is back, he has Doctor Strange powers. At first I was confused whether I should hate this, but looking back at it, yeah, it actually makes sense. Considering when Strange first used magic, he wasn't really openly accepting of the whole magical world, but of course Ned would. Also again, he continues to be the best Spider-Man friend throughout these Spider-Man movies. But I honestly thought at one point that he was going to be neglected by Peter too much, that he becomes evil and becomes the Hobgoblin. I'm glad he didn't actually do it. I think John Watts also did a better job of elevating Peter and MJ's relationship. Peter isn't constantly simping for MJ. MJ is supportive of Peter. There's no jealousy issues, which obviously makes the ending sadder. Okay, I'm sorry, but I had to quickly change topics and talk about the legacy characters. I think that they are handled so well. Their personalities are nailed hard. Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker is still a try-hard cool guy, but it works well with the dynamic between him and the other Spider-Man. And I like Tobey being calm and collected. He isn't depressing to watch and not a complete show-off either. Thomas Peter works great as Peter 1 because of his experience with the Avengers. I love their reaction to hearing the Avengers. It's one of my favorite scenes along with the web swing sequence. The villains were all good. The main standouts were Green Goblin, who I think I liked more here than in the original trilogy, just because Willem Dafoe was more crazy. Doc Ock and surprisingly Electro, let me add, was significantly improved since The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Although I'm not sure how I feel about Sandman and the Lizard, I still think that they're underrated villains, but their motivations aren't consistent. For example, Sandman wants to go back to the world to see his daughter, but why is he working with Electro, the character who wants to stay in the MCU? The Lizard, I kinda expected him to create a whole army of lizard creatures or something, I don't know. But I did notice that they hid him a lot in this movie, which I guess was due to budget restraints. If I had to further nitpick with the story, I'm still confused as to how erasing everyone's memory of Peter Parker causes the bad guys and other Spider-Man to disappear, or if it can remove physical historical documents that proves that Peter Parker exists. I'm sure there's a reason, but because the movie is 2 hours and 30 minutes long, it's the time to explain all that could have taken up too much time for this movie's fan service, which makes me want an extended cut of this film to be released on Blu-ray. Another issue I had with this film is the soundtrack. This happens with a lot of MCU movies where they don't put enough emphasis on the music, and I didn't realize this until I watched a cam recording of Andrew Garfield exiting the portal. that it was playing the Amazing Spider-Man 1 theme. In my web movies review, I said I really liked James Horner's soundtrack, and somehow I didn't notice this the 2 times I watched it in cinema. Also, they played the Electro's theme from The Amazing Spider-Man 2 for like 2 seconds, and then changed it to a generic orchestra. That kind of bugged me, and I think it bugged a lot of people too. But overall, I'm gonna give this movie a 4.5 stars out of 5. This was definitely one of my favorite movies that I've watched this year, and I've seen a lot of people switch off from the Iron Boy Jr. mindset after watching it. But I did think that the joke in the movie was kind of funny. And here are the rankings for the movies. And if you have a complaint, you can argue with me in the comments below. And thanks for watching the video, and here's the final unscripted update for this journey. Okay, so now this is the end of the Road to No Way Home. No more movies. Well, I guess I'm planning on reviewing Morbius when it comes out in January. But the date this review should be out should be on January 1st, which is going to be crazy if it does, which although it's going, I'm like 15 days late overdue, or 16, well 17, yeah, about 13 days overdue, like if you're living in America, I believe. Well, today is meant to be my birthday, and I thought what a way to celebrate by posting this video. And I'm hoping that people, if you've watched this journey with me, that you enjoyed this whole journey. And also, I'm thinking of making a whole Road to No Way Home compilation video, which includes my review of the Venom movies, and maybe remaster the Vol audio a bit for the certain reviews, and basically just combine them to one whole video. I'm not sure when I'm gonna do that, but who knows, we'll see. Yeah, it's new year. I'm glad that I've done this amazing journey. I love making these like movie review style videos, and it's really fun, and I'm glad to actually achieve a whole freaking marathon review, and also put in the effort of making them properly. And that is it for today. Thanks for watching the video. If you liked the video, please give it a like. Remember to subscribe to keep up with more videos, and see ya next time.